He's been recognized by Fortune magazine as one of the top small business CEOs in the country. And what Eric does is his work is in what he calls the anatomy of results, or the anatomy of performance. And what he's found is really interesting. When Eric works with what he would call average athletes or average performers and asks them what is the most important factor that affects how you perform, most of them say it's what you do or your actions or why you do it, your intentions, your goals. But here's the interesting thing. When he works with Olympic athletes, when he works with top business CEOs and he asks the same question, their answer is how you show up or your state of mind. And your state of mind is everything. And this is fascinating when we bring this to sports, because in my experience, 20 years of coaching, as coaches we're taught a lot about teaching technique and teaching tactics, but we're very, very rarely taught to teach state of mind, right? And to teach, hey, how do your kids show up? And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because when kids show up to a game, they all have the same intentions. They want to win, they want to play hard. They all have the same actions. They kick, they run, they pass, they dribble, some better than others. But really, state of mind is everything. If your son gets in a fight with you in the morning, breaks up with his girlfriend on the way to the game, and gets in a fight with the coach, probably not going to play well. By the same token, a less talented athlete with a positive state of mind is going to play their best. Now, what Eric has found is backed up by a lot of advances in neuroscience. One of the most famous people is a psychologist from Stanford named Dr. Carol Dweck. And she wrote a couple years ago the book called Mindset. And what she has found in her decades of research on motivation is that people have one of two types of mindset. In a fixed mindset, you're very results oriented. Your achievement in an activity is a reflection of your ability. So for instance, if you have a son or a daughter who does poorly on a math test and says, well, I'm just not good at math. They don't do well in their game and they say, well, I'm just not good at soccer. That's a fixed mindset, because everything they do is a reflection of their ability. And the problem with a fixed mindset is that effort is meaningless. Because if you're smart, why try? If you're talented, why try? And I've worked with so many players over the years who were very talented players. And I could never understand until I read this, well, why didn't they try? And they don't try because they don't want to challenge themselves, because if they challenge themselves and they try and they fail, well, then I'm not smart or I'm not talented. And Dweck also found that there's people with a growth mindset. And in a growth mindset, you're very process oriented and effort is everything. So a child who plays soccer who's with a growth mindset who says, I lost my starting spot, I need to practice more. I failed my math test, I need to study more. Effort is everything. And so think about your own kids. And people are not all one or the other. Some people are very growth oriented in their business and fixed in their relationships. I know every time my wife gets mad at me, I just say, well, I'm just not a good husband. None of you say that, right? The beauty of a growth mindset is that anything you learn and what you are today as an athlete or as a student is nothing compared to what I could be 6 months from now or a year from now with some effort and some application. That's the high performance mindset. And that's what we want to talk about today. Is how can we teach our children to adapt a high performing state of mind? To do that, we really have to think about, well, why do kids play? And why do they quit? And this up here on the board is what we call a seminal study. It's been reproduced many times in many countries. And if we want to think about, well, okay, well, my kid will enjoy playing because of these reasons right here. And whenever they do the survey, to have fun is always number one, boys or girls, to have fun. Kids play to be with their friends, they play to learn new things, few things they're good at: stay in shape, the excitement of competition. It doesn't say to win. Winning is one of the choices, but it usually falls in about number 7 or 8 on the list of why do they play. On the other side there, well, why do kids quit? Because of criticism and yelling, no playing time, emphasis on winning, poor communication, boredom, fear of making mistakes. Now, whenever I talk about this, I almost always would get a question. Someone would say, hey, well, coach, that's nice, but my kid's a national team player, my kid's an academy player. That's for recreational kids. And so I asked this question to Dr. Dan Freigang, who is the sports psychologist for U.S. Soccer, USA Hockey, and the U.S. Ski team. And he said, yeah, I used to get the question myself. So I repeated this study with all the national team athletes that I work with, from the youth to the professionals, and the results were exactly the same. So not only the best youth national team athletes, but the skiers and the soccer players who are paid to play and paid to win, when asked what motivates you, it's because it's fun. Play because it's fun. I don't work sports, I play sports. And when it becomes work, I don't play as well. All right? And then we all know players and pros who go through slumps, and they say, oh, they're grinding, they're really going, they can't hit a shot, can't score a goal. You look at Fernando Torres in soccer right now, one of the best strikers in the world. Do you think he's playing soccer these days with 80,000 people booing him? No, he's working, just trying to do anything to score a goal. So if we want our children to play their best, if we want them to enjoy sports, we need a lot of things under the why kids play category, right? And we need an absence of the things on the right there, why kids quit. And we need to create an environment that has that. So how do we go about doing that? 3 ways for you this evening that I think is ways that you can really make help your kids to enjoy sports and play their best. First one I call hand them the keys. As my friend Bruce Brown says, he's a very well-known coach. He says, help your children find their passion, don't determine it for them. Hand them the keys means giving them control and ownership of their sports experience. Kids who have control, kids who have ownership, they play harder, they play longer, they enjoy it more, they try new things. They're accountable for their actions. And the best way to do this is goal setting. And when I was a young coach, I gave my teams no control. I set the goals, I set the standards, and I failed miserably. It was awful. And I could never understand why my teams didn't care as much as me. And why my teams, when I was saying, oh, this is a big game, this is important, didn't put in their full effort. And then as soon as I learned that actually my goals weren't the important goals, that their goals were important, then we started doing well. And so what I then started doing with my teams was before every season, and I talked to your coaching staff about this before this meeting, before every season I would sit down with my players and I would have each player and their parents at the meeting, and they would fill out a sheet. 3 personal goals, 3 goals for the team. And I would ask the parents to do the same thing. What are 3 goals for my son or daughter? What are 3 goals for their team? And then I would collect them. I would say, go home, and you have to compare. And here's the hard thing about being a parent. And in 20 years, I've never seen it work when you don't do this. Whatever your kids' goals are, you have to accept them. You have to accept them. Right? Now, it doesn't mean that you can't suggest to your son or your daughter that, hey, you're capable of a little bit more. But if you don't accept your children's goals, and yours are not compatible with theirs, that abyss between the two will swallow your relationship. And when they're young, you can push them towards your goals, but anyone who is a teenager knows, right, that if you're pushing a teenager to something that they don't want to do, it doesn't really work very well. Right? And there's no sports accomplishment worth, in my opinion, worth trading your relationship with your kids. And I've seen so many parents do that. So many parents. When we were talking about it at the coaches meeting tonight, a kid that Ramo coached, and the dad, after she was done with college, said, I can't believe I ruined my daughter's sports career and my relationship. And that happens all the time. set these goals, and then here's the beauty of that. Once I would get the goals back to my players, I would then compile the goals. And I would sit down with the team and say, okay, this is what you've asked for, 100% commitment at practice. Always give great effort. We want to win state championship again. We want to advance the finals of regionals. Whatever it was, whatever their goals were. And then I would tell them, these are your goals, and now I'm coaching you to what you've asked for. And just like some of us, we hire personal trainers to push us on the days that we don't want to be pushed, that's the job of a coach, to say these are your goals, and I'm going to push a little beyond those, but I'm going to push you to what you've asked for. And then when the effort wasn't good in practice, I could say, stop. Is this how you think we're going to beat San Diego Surf regionals, by practicing like this? No, coach. Okay, let's do better. And 9 times out of 10, they would do better. So it's really important, because I think as a parent, you really do have to push your kids. My friend Jim Taylor, he's a psychologist from Denver, he says, kids are creatures of inertia, and they tend to stay at rest until you give them a bump, and then they tend to stay in motion. And we have to push them. But the problem is when we push them to things that we want them to do versus things that they want them to do is completely different. So what we're saying is, here's your goals. This is what you want to do. Now it's my job to help you do it right. So that's number 1. Give your kids a little bit of control. Number 2, trust your coach and trust your child. If you went home tonight and your son or your daughter was doing their math homework, and you stood behind them as they're doing their homework and you were saying, carry the 1, put the decimal here, multiply that, what are you doing? What would they say? Come on, Dad, leave me alone, right? And if you say you do that? and if you went to their math test on Friday, you stood at the wall and you cheered when they got it right, but then when they were getting a question wrong, you yelled out the right answer. Not only would it be incredibly distracting, but they would say, come on, leave me alone. This is my experience. I'll get this. But yet every Saturday we go to our kids' sports tests, and what do? We run here, pass here, run up, run back, kick it here, shoot. My favorite, because as a coach, I believe that you have to teach kids to play the game right, is, I tell my kids, hey, in the back, take it down, pick your head up, dribble, or play a pass out of the back. And so here's little Johnny at right back. He's in the box, and he gets the ball, and the forward's running at him, and he picks his head up and says, Coach told me to play a pass. And it gets intercepted, and he gets scored on. And what's everyone yelling? Why did you do that? Don't play with it back there. Come on. So now Johnny's totally confused, because he's like, well, my coach told me to do this. My parents are yelling at me, and all my friends' parents are yelling at me. And now I don't know what to do. Can I have sub? Right? So we have to trust our kids. We have to trust the process. Soccer, or any sport, it's really hard to learn. My kids, I have 2 kids, and they go to a Spanish immersion school in Oregon, where I live. And when my daughter, who's the oldest, when we went there to start the program, we sat down with the program director, and she said, okay, in 6 years, by 5th grade, your daughter will know how to read and write at or above grade level in Spanish and in English. My wife and I say, well, okay, that makes sense. It's hard enough to do that in 1 language, never mind 2. Yeah, you get 6 years. That's cool. We trust you have a curriculum and a process and qualified teachers. Now, running clubs for 20 years, I couldn't ever imagine saying, okay, you write your check. In 6 years, your son or your daughter will be able to play soccer at or above their ability level. Now, I know I can teach that, but there's just not that type of patience when it comes to sports. You rarely even get 6 months, sometimes 6 weeks, mostly 6 days. And it's like, if we don't win this weekend, we're out of here. We're going to play for the Zebras, right? So, as part of that, what we have to recognize is that, and I think this is really important, process about trial and error and failing and getting up and falling down and getting up. And the funny thing is, if we really think about it, the most successful people are the people who have failed the most. The most successful people are the ones who fail the most. You don't get good at shooting free throws by never trying them. You get good by practicing and missing and then being good. And most business people have failed many times. And I imagine for all of you, if you think about what are the things you're most proud of in your life, your greatest accomplishments, it's not something that came easy. It's something that was tough and trial, and you struggled and you failed and you said, no, I gotta get up, I gotta do it again. And the tough thing is, if we prevent our children from learning that now, if we prevent them from having small failures in sports that really don't matter all that much, what are they going to do when later on, when we're not there to help them, they encounter a big failure and they've never experienced failure? And a lot of businesses these days are saying it's the hardest thing. These college grads are coming out and they have kids in the workplace and they don't do their job. And so they fire them. The kids will say, well, wait, how can you fire me? I don't get a chance to do extra credit. I can't do some extra work here. So we're denying our children an opportunity to learn by never letting them fail. And I like John Wooden's quote, the basketball coach, because they fear failure, many people never try and thereby rob themselves of opportunities to be successful. So if you want your children to play their best, take a step back, trust them, trust their coach, trust the curriculum and trust the fact that soccer takes a long time to learn. And by focusing on the process and seeing incremental improvements, you'll see your kids getting better and better and better. If you focus on the result, focus on how they do this weekend, when you think about it, they have no control over that. Right? Kids control their effort, they control their focus, they can control their commitment. They can't control who they play against, they can't control the referee, they can't control the weather. Which, by the way, it's freezing here. So focus on the process and focus on them getting better, and you'll see a big difference. Carol Dweck, again, the Stanford psychologist, she did a test on how 6 words of praise affected performance in, I think, 5th grade students in New York. And she took 200 of the kids and praised them and said, you did well. She gave them a simple puzzle and said, you did well on this test, you must be smart. And took the other half and said, you did well on this test, you must have worked hard. And then she tested them again on a harder puzzle. And the children who were praised for being smart did worse and gave up quick. The kids who were praised for working hard stuck at it and said they enjoyed it. And she gave them an even harder puzzle. The kids who were praised for being smart, because outcome was everything, said, I hate this, I don't even want to try. The kids who were praised for effort worked a long time and got at it. And then the amazing thing was, then she gave them a puzzle that was as easy as the first one she gave, a very simple one. The children who were praised for effort improved their scores and did it quicker. Kids who were praised for being smart, their scores were worse. So it's a really fascinating thing when we focus on the process, when we focus on effort, what a difference it can make for our kids. I have to get a drink of water. Enjoy the experience. This is one of my favorite quotes when I researched my books. When I found this, it was great. I should probably tell you I support my son's tennis because he gets so much out of it that it improves him mentally and physically and teaches him so much about life. All that is certainly true. The real reason is because it adds drama to my life. If you do anything, if you take anything from this, just enjoy the experience of youth sports. And here's what I mean by that. I have a friend in Bend, her name's Steph, and she has a very talented 15-year-old son. He was actually just selected by Adidas to go train with national pool, great kid, great family. And about a year ago, I was with her, and she said, "Hey, you're writing a book. Give me the best piece of advice in your whole book." And this is what I said. I said, "Just enjoy watching your kid play. Love watching your kid play. Enjoy the experience." And so Steph laughed at me and said, "Really? That's it? You're not going to sell any books?" And I said, "Okay, Steph, that's fine." And so 6 months later, she calls me up. She says, "Remember that thing you told me about enjoying the experience?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "It has changed everything in my family." And I said, "Well, tell me, Steph, because I'm going to tell the story to everyone, so go ahead." She said, "I realized that I wasn't really enjoying this, that I was nervous before games, that I was nervous during games on how the team would do. And so I was nervous, so what was I doing? I was yelling at the referee, and I was yelling at the coach, and I was yelling at my kids. And after the game, if we didn't do well, I was so upset that I dissected the game on the ride home." And if you haven't heard, when kids are asked, "What is your worst sports memory?" it's always the ride home memory. Right? The ride home. She said, it just wasn't fun. And so she said, so I stopped doing all that, and I just started enjoying it. And I'm not going to be nervous, and I'm not going to yell at the ref, I'm going to go stand over here, and I'm just going to let this experience belong to my kids. And she said, and the big thing was with my older son, the one who's going to Real Madrid, she said, he's a very confident kid, and he's very talented, and he always was pretty good with this. She said, but my two younger boys, who weren't nearly as talented athletes as their older brother, she said, it changed everything about them. I hadn't realized how much they were disliking sports because I would go to their games and I would expect them to be like their older brother. And I couldn't understand why they weren't as good and why their teams didn't do as well. And after the games, I'd be so upset because they weren't doing well that my kids were 8 and 10 at the time, or 8 and 11. They started to believe that they were responsible for my happiness. And what a terrible burden to put on a young kid, that they are responsible for your happiness. And she said, as soon as I just said, I'm going to enjoy this, and the only thing I say to them after the game is, where do you want to go for lunch? Where do you want to go for ice cream? And if they want to talk about the game later at home, we talk about the game. But I don't yell at referees, and I don't do that. I just have fun. And I enjoy the experience. I take that time that sports gives me with my kids, that FaceTime with my teenagers that is so hard to come by. We don't put on a DVD in the car, we talk. Right? And we turn our trips into family adventures. And she said, my younger boys started playing again. And they started playing more sports, and they started enjoying soccer, and they played better than they'd ever played before because it took all the pressure off. And they started saying, sports was just fun again. So if you do anything, enjoy the experience. But that's kind of 3 ideas, right? Give them some control, trust the process, and be patient, and enjoy the experience, and it really makes a huge difference. So this only gets us part of the way there. Another famous athlete, Mother Teresa. This only gets us part of the way there, right? Again, 2 things play into how our kids perform. Their state of mind and the environment that they're playing in. And right now, that environment and their state of mind is having 70% of kids quit. Well, how do we change this environment? And I had a long, long talk with your coaches about this because different sporting organizations are trying to do this. And this isn't just an American problem. I was with a guy from UEFA at the National Soccer Coaches Convention, and he said the biggest problem at Ajax and Tottenham and Man United in their youth academies is parental involvement right now. It's parents countermanding what the coaches are trying to teach and putting pressure on their kids to be the next Rooney or the next Ronaldo. And so these organizations are trying to change this. And even U.S. Soccer now, I teach coaching licenses, and they have part of the curriculum is hand this piece of paper to your parents and make them sign it that says, I won't yell at the ref, and I won't talk to my coach, and I won't do this, and I won't do that. And I think that's terrible. I don't think that works. Because, like I told the Bannister story, we can't really compel people to act differently. If we compel people to act differently, they'll do that until they're not held accountable, and then they'll go back to what they were doing. But if we help people see differently, people see differently, then they behave differently, then they act differently because they know that it benefits their kids, right? And so if we know that it'll benefit our children to give them some control and to take a step back on the sideline, then we're going to do that, not because you're told to by Lucas or some piece of paper you signed, but because it benefits your kid. I know you do it.
Yeah. Right.
So how do we change this then? And here's how I think. As Mother Teresa said, never worry about numbers, help one person at a time, and always start with the person nearest you. You gonna help her?
No, she's gonna help.
No, okay, good. Always start with the person nearest you. So you start with your own son or your own daughter, right? And then what happens is there's a difference. They will play better. I promise you that. You do these things, they will play better. And when they start performing better, people take notice. And you become like the pebble in someone's shoes, right? And they walk around, what's going on? What is it in my shoe? Well, you become, and eventually they say, hey, what are you doing again? Because your son, your daughter's playing so well. And you look like you're having fun right now. And hey, by the way, I didn't yell at the ref all by myself. Aren't you going to come yell with me? You know, and you're like, no, I'm doing it differently. I'm doing it differently. And when we change like that, we change our child, right? We make positive changes, then we start changing our team. You know, and then you change teams, and then you change clubs. And this is happening now. This is going to happen. My guess is in 10 years, education for parents is going to be given equal, if not more, support than coaching education. Because this is the missing piece in this country. And 6-7 years ago, I went to the NSCA convention. No one even talked about, you know, how do we help our parents become partners in this? And I went this January, and there was 7 lectures on this. This is a big thing, but it's really early in the process. And one of the things that I love about Rush Soccer is that Rush Soccer is an early adapter. Rush Soccer does things 10 years before anyone else does. Right? Rush Soccer just had a girl named Lindsay Duran turn down a scholarship at North Carolina and sign with PSG in France on a $100,000 signing bonus, plus the money up front for a scholarship, plus a pro contract. Right? Rush Soccer is doing things that no one else is doing, and so in talking to them and talking to Lucas and talking to Tim Schultz, we're committed to bringing programs like this to clubs across the country and being early adapters, because I think it's incredibly important that we shift this paradigm. My kids are young. I want them to get out of sports what I got. Sports changed my life. Sports helped me learn so many lessons, helped me overcome so many things, and it scares me to think that in our country 70% of kids aren't getting